haven't worked on one of these in a little while. But yeah, to get these things apart, you first got to take these screws out. They're either 5.5 millimeter, or you can use the Torx screwdriver. I can't remember what the Torx size is. Um, Whatever's closest to your reach is what I always go for. It's normally the Torx, but this guy was just right there. So getting this apart, take these screws out, and then you can take the lens off. Hopefully these motors aren't too stuck, so that way I can show you the tape technique. I'm not a huge fan of using the tape technique, but I wanted to show it today, so we're gonna see if we can get that off like that. All right, so then around the lens you have some tabs. This one's clearly been off. A couple of the tabs are broken. But there we go, there's two. And that opens her up. Okay, cool. We're not too stuck, so we can mark these. All right. So now what you do is take some painter's tape, masking tape, whatever you want to call it, and mark them where they sit. Okay, so it took me a minute to find my painter's tape because I never use it. Uh, but okay. So I'm not a big fan of this technique because it leaves the risk of, leaving some adhesive on the instrument cluster, especially with these screens here. So we try our best to keep it off, but obviously that one, it goes over the screen. Luckily, this isn't that kind of window where you can't wipe it. You can wipe those down. So yeah, what you're doing is taking it and you're going to the very last step of the stepper motor. So you feel it bottom out, and you don't want to turn hard because you could go past it. And then once you go past it, you can't use this technique. And this is terrible if you are a technician doing this. This isn't how you should be doing it. But if you're a do-it-yourselfer, doing it home, and you're doing your own cluster, and you're doing just once, this technique works. It gets you by, it gets your cluster done. You don't have to always know where everything goes. So then you're just going to take a Sharpie and just mark where that last step was. So that way when you put your new stepper motors on, you can just line back up to that. The reason why this isn't a very good technique, though, is say you put the stepper motor on there and it's 1 degree, we're just slightly high on one of the pins there. It's now tilted just a hair, and now your last step is actually in a different position. So now the whole thing's going to be off by a lot. See, you can put these motors on not completely perfect and still align it perfectly if you just line up to where it zeros and homes at. So that way, once it goes to the home position, you just set your needle to where that home position is, and it'll work. So you can get away with having some slop in that. Maybe you have a slightly bent stator on there, manufacturing things, just the things just not 100% the same as the old motor that came off. So that's why this technique's not a great technique, but it works perfect for somebody that's doing this themselves and doing it at home. So now to take the needles off, we're just gonna twist them around until they kind of feel a little bit loose, and then just pull straight up. You don't have to have one of these tools, a fork or something like that will work too, but yeah. Rotate it a couple of times just to loosen it up, and then it'll come right off. So now we got that off. We got our tape marks on here. We can take the back cover off, which it's just got a couple of tabs here. Just pull your tabs and try not to break them. I don't recommend using a tool to remove them. If you are going to use a tool, use something like your plastic pry tool, so that way you're not leaving big marks on it. But just go around. I don't do these Buick Park Avenues enough to remember which way's the easy way of going around it, but if it's the top first or the bottom first. But like I said, just try to avoid using a metal tool. You come in with a metal tool like this and start scraping and scratching, you're going to leave marks. So, I just scratched it right there doing that. See, if you do it again, you can slip and scratch it. You don't want to leave a bunch of scratches on your customer's thing. So, yeah, definitely if you're doing this as a business, don't be using metal tools to take your lenses or your covers off. Just, come in with something plastic if you need to. And if you really have to come in with something metal, these picks work great because they're so small. The marks that they leave are just not going to really be that obvious. They're not going to show up to the customer. It's not going to look like somebody just came and pried the whole thing off for that customer when they get their cluster back. Sorry, I had to set it down in my lap to pull on it better. It's just easier that way. Okay, so now we got a part. You can see it's got the same stepper motors as we deal with in the GM trucks all the time, and that's what was wrong with this, is these two motors had failed. Um, you also can get some cracked solder joints, but not quite as many that you'd be looking at on these because of the fact that they are through-hole components instead of surface mount. So it's got a daughter board down here, which has the EEPROM and everything on it, uh, just like the 99 to 02 trucks. One thing to keep an eye out on are some of these resistors. They get hot. You can tell which ones they are because you look at the circuit board and you can see discoloration there. Really common to have cracked solder joints on these, which will cause dimness on some of the screens. So definitely come down and look for that. And there we go. We can see we have a cracked solder joint there. And you can also see discoloration on the board here. Just keep an eye on those areas for cracked solder joints. Pretty common thing to see on them. So if you see where some power resistor was there, so we got this resistor here, no cracked solder joints on them, but it is not uncommon to find that. So definitely just keep an eye on those for it. And then again, same kind of bulbs as the trucks have, the 03 to 04, but these ones are just through the hole instead of surface mount. So yeah, just replace your bulbs, replace your stepper motors. Pretty common rebuild here. So we'll go through this real quick while I'm waiting on the desoldering gun to heat up. I want to mention the daughter board on these is it is socketed, so you can take it off if you need to for some reason. So if you need to get at your EEPROM, which is right here, you just take this off. Just make sure you get the orientation right when you put it back on. But yeah, it is socketed, so easier to deal with than the 99 to 02 trucks where you have to desolder the 64 pins just to get to access to it. So yeah, daughter board is socketed on these, so a little bit easier for reprogramming the EEPROM if needed. I'm sure there are some test points that you could solder to on these. I'm not familiar with them enough to know what the test points are for that. But again, you just take it off and then just desolder the chip and program it out of circuit. Works perfectly fine. So looks like we are about to temperature here. So we'll get started. I'm just going to replace all the incandescent bulbs, even though these ones you really shouldn't need to replace because they just they have such a short duty cycle on them. You should be able to leave those on, but I'm just going to replace everything on this one. Okay, I started to desolder that bulb, and I remembered that these are just like the 99 to 02s with the circuit board, where obviously it's a single-sided circuit board. Everything, there's no copper on this side. Everything, all the copper's on this side. It's just like those 99 to 02s, where it's a really cheaply made circuit board, and it's really easy to lift the pads. So what I'm actually going to do is cut the bulbs out first, and then deal with them from the other side. It's just less stress on the board doing just one pad instead of trying to get both of them done. So yeah, we're just gonna do that, get the bulbs off, and then deal with them. So there we go. Oh crap, we broke one. You try to cut as low as you can so you don't break the bulbs. It looks like we broke two, so we got a little bit of broken glass, but I'm just gonna shake this off over the trash can to get rid of that broken glass. But yeah, we're replacing all the bulbs, so yeah, it's just much easier to cut the bulbs off of the board, so that way you don't end up with broken pads. Let me just it's just so much easier to deal with it like that than it is the other way. Because all what we now have to do is desolder those pads and get them off. Because if you look, I started to lift that pad right there when I was taking it out that way. So instead, what we're going to do is come around with, so get some flux on all of these. Let's see, there we go. All right, where are they? One, two, There's a third one around here. There we go. Oh, that one's still on the board. All right. There. Okay, so yeah, just 2 right there. Okay, so yeah, that's all of them. All right, then we're going to come around with, instead of the desoldering gun, we're going to come around with solder wick and wick it up. See, if you try to just pull them out like that, you're still left with the hole, so that's why we come with the hole clogged with solder. So then we come with the solder wick. Either way works. I like to wick it up first and then take it out, but it's really up to you how you want to do it. Just find that a easier technique to do without lifting those solder pads, because these are just really, really cheaply made circuit boards. It's very difficult not to lift the solder pads on these. That one fell through to the other side. Okay, that should be all of them. This one looks like, oh yeah, I didn't take them out there. Okay, we got all of them cleared out. Let's reflow that resistor that needed to be reflown, and then we can start putting this thing back together. Just inspecting the board a little closely, make sure there's no other cracked solder joints. Yep, I don't see any more. Cool. So yeah, let's start putting the new bulbs in, and then we will put in the new stepper motors. Okay, so that's about half the bulbs. Let me grab some more. I ran out of them in the drawer that I grabbed. Let's see, I have more of them though. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to test your lighting if you don't have the plugs. And I'm doing that in particular for this video because I actually don't have the connectors for this particular vehicle. I just don't do enough of them to justify tearing one out at the junkyard. I haven't had an opportunity to pull one out, and whenever I see these, I never think to grab one out of them because I do 1 or 2 of these a year. So I'll just show you how to power it up. Let's say we don't know the pin out of this. I do know the pin out of the connectors. I have them, but we're going to go for it from the legs of this. So how we can test our illumination without it is going to be just like this. Since these are not LEDs, we don't have to worry about the polarity for the lights. We just have to get 2 of the legs here. Make sure we don't short against anything else. and just turn it on. And there we go. So all of our illumination lights are working. These ones aren't coming on because they're not illumination. They are turn signals. So quick and easy way to test that. You just leave your legs sticking out so that way you have something to connect to, and then you can test them like that. So there we go. We now know all of our illumination works, that we have good connections on all of them, and it was important to test that because we did have partially lifted pads on one or two of the lights there, because, I mean, like I said, these circuit boards, very cheaply made, so they are very, very easy to lift pads on. So let's grab 3 stepper motors. We're gonna, the speedometer was working, but there's no point in leaving a crappy stepper motor on. When you get these things for $1.55 a piece, when you're ordering a lot of them, there is just no excuse for leaving used stepper motors on there. I do save used stepper motors that are good. The X25s I'll save, and I keep them in a box. And I do not use them for rebuilds, but I will give them away to people that want to rebuild their own. They're local, they come, they go, oh yeah, let me, I'm thinking about having it rebuilt. I take a look at it, and then they go, you know what, I want to rebuild it myself. I go, okay, here you go, and I'll give them those kits, because I could care less on them, honestly. And let's see, is this the right one? Yep, that's the right one. Making sure we were going in the right way, because you could put it in like 2 different ways there. Okay, because yeah, if we were going in the wrong one, we would have gone there. All right, let's solder these down now. And now, if this was your do-it-yourself rebuild, building it at home, this would be where you clean all the flux off the board and you call it done. And you put it back together and you're done. But I'm actually going to hook up to the proper pins here, power it up and test it. Since this is not a home rebuild, so I have to actually test it and verify everything's working. So let me get wired in here, and then we'll take a look at that. All right, so I actually had to ask in my Facebook group because I could not remember, well, not remember, I could not find my notebook that had the pins for this one written down. So yeah, I had to ask in the group. They replied, but as they were replying, I did find my notebook. So what I wrote down in my notebook to power it on were these 2 grounds. I think you actually only need one of the 2 grounds, because I think one's just for the lights and then the other one's for everything else. But yeah, you have 2 grounds and 2 positives to turn it on. I believe this was the other positive to turn on the lights, but I'm just worried about turning on the cluster, not all the lights. So here we got it wired up to turn it on. Give it just a second. There we go. We boot it up, and our screens are working, and all of our LEDs are coming on. So now all we have to do is put this thing back together, and obviously we can't leave it hooked up like this for powering it on the bench, but we can flip it over and just clip to it the other way. But this was just the easy way to power it up real quick using these clips, because I don't have the connector to this one. So yeah, you don't always have to have the connectors to be able to work on the instrument clusters. You do need to power them up to test them if you're working on them as a technician. You need to verify that everything's working before you mail it back to the customer. So yeah, let's turn the power back off and get this thing back together so I can go run it back to the customer. I normally don't do deliveries, but this one's for one of the local used car lots. So that is something I am willing to do delivery for a business that I'm working with. But yeah, Facebook Marketplace customers, not worth my time to do a delivery. So we will hook it up real quick and actually use these marks to put it on, and then we will verify that we got a good setup on there. So let's get these clipped back on. Again, do everything in your power to avoid touching the screens, so that way there's no risk of leaving a mark on them. Now, if if I remember correctly. Yep, these are all the same length. So we'll just put it a little bit far that way, and then we're just going to slide. Like you can feel that it's not moving any steps anymore, so we know we can get to it good. A little too far. There we go, perfect. All right, let's put the other one on. Perfect. And that'll work. So there we go. We got them all on there. Let's go ahead and take this tape off. And then we'll power it up and see if these guys go to the correct home position. So let me hook back to it on the back. I might be able to grab at them with the little hooks on there. So let's see. I'm going to use the lens to keep it from shifting on me. So we do want to verify how well that tape technique worked for us. So we're going to set the lens on there. I don't trust the taping technique, so I'm not going to clip the lens down just that way I don't have to take it off. But yeah, going to try to grab onto these little guys over here. So it is going to be, we need a ground right here. And, yep. Let's just get these off of there. Ground there. And then positive there. And positive there. All right. Let's see. Let's put the device here so that way, hopefully, y'all can slightly see it. That's just going to be impossible to get a better camera angle on. Oh, and see, we already lost our connection there. Okay, so it is on. Yeah, y'all can't see what I can see, but we got the everything looks like it is about correct. So the fuel gauge is a needle width below E. The speedometer's pointing right to the middle of the, well, right up to the top corner of the P on mile per hour, which is correct because these start at, so they don't start at 0, they start at 10 on the scale. So yeah, it's about the width from 10 to 0. There is the top of that P. So it is pointing to the correct position. And that, so yeah, we did get a good connection on there doing that this time. Sometimes your needles, they're off just a hair from doing the tape method. So I did want to show that for your do-it-yourselfers doing it at home. But again, if you're a technician doing this, don't do the tape method. Just, do it right. So, know where it's supposed to point. Is what I'm getting at there. That comes with experience, though, so when you're first beginning, you do end up having to do some of that kind of stuff. So yeah, we got this done. We got it together. So I just got to go take this back to the customer now. I hope you guys liked the video. I wish I could have given you a little bit better angle view on this. Definitely join the Facebook group. It is full of a ton of knowledge. And the customer may have given me the wrong year on this because I asked for the pinout for it, and somebody gave me a pinout that I kept finding on Google using the year that he gave me for this, but who cares? It's done now. We got the cluster done, and we got another video done. So yeah, I hope you guys liked the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, but before I end this, Raul sent me some of this stuff as he said, hey, look, there's this cheap flux that it works, and you should, should know about it. So I'm not a huge fan of cheap flux myself. I do like to stick with name brands, but I think it is good. I'm really appreciative of him sending me this, so that way I had something to test, so that way I can recommend a cheap flux to people. And it does work. So if you don't want to buy, reputable name brand fluxes, this stuff, yeah, I give it a pass. It works. I don't trust them for, the longevity of it. Definitely want to clean it off because we don't know how corrosive it is. I know I didn't capture in the video cleaning the flux off, but I did clean it off the board. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.